Do you have the knowledge to work with the next generation of refrigerants? ESCO Institute can help you learn the information you need with the low GWP A2L refrigerant safety course. Did you know newer refrigerants are less harmful to the environment? Did you know there are new standards for the transportation of low GWP refrigerants? Did you know most A2L equipment will require refrigerant detection systems, and you will be required to use no spark, no arc tools and equipment? Get the facts! These are just some of the things you need to know to work on new equipment. Take the online course to learn more. The ESCO Institute Low GWP A2L Refrigerant Safety course is interactive and engaging and will prepare you for the Low GWP A2L Refrigerant Safety Certification exam. You will find the Low GWP A2L Refrigerant Safety course on the HVACR Learning Network, the industry's leading source of online and digital content. Visit hvacr.elearn.network today.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us once again on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. So we spent a lot of time talking about the transitions that are happening in our industry. We all have so many things to learn. We have a lot of things to stay up to date with. And so every week we bring different industry professionals in to talk about these transitions. We want you to know that you're a part of an entire village of HVAC refrigeration professionals. So we're here to learn together, grow together, and just be prepared for this, I would say this crazy evolution of our industry. Wouldn't you say, guys?
I would agree.
100%.
So joining us this week, we've got Stephen Hampton and Anthony Nash of A-Gas. Guys, we're so glad that you're joining us today. I'm joining in from Brownsburg, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis. Where are you guys located?
I'm here in sunny Phoenix, Arizona today.
All right. And Stephen?
Yeah, currently down here in Punta Gorda, Florida, at one of our plants.
Ooh, nice. I love the whole Punta Gorda area. Hey, Todd, what's going on, man? Southern California, you probably got some fair weather today. Everyone, let us know where you're joining from. We love to know how large this community of HVAC professionals is growing into. A lot of times we have people from all over the world joining us, and so we're excited to have you here with us. So we're going to talk about these changes that are happening. I know some people are like, we're kind of beating this horse down to the ground about refrigerant and recovery and reclamation and evacuation and A2Ls. And well, it's all for very, very important reasons. It's because we have a lot to learn about, and there's a lot of things that need to be corrected when we start talking about this transition. There's a lot of myths out there. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and I'm going to start with one right off the bat. We had an interesting conversation. We had an interesting happening this week, and I want to share that with you, and then we're going to talk about it just a little bit. So the great Ty Brannaman coming in with a myth buster for this week.
When I can't get 410A at my supplier, I'm going to go down to Old Mexico, bring back as much as I need.
So did you guys see that in the news this week about the arrest that actually happened due to the illegal transport of refrigerant into the United States? Right? So it's the first one that has happened in the country. So I'm going to show a real quick video on the public announcement that came from the Department of Justice on that one.
Hello, I'm Tara McGrath, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of California. This office is at the forefront of environmental prosecutions, and today is a significant milestone for our country. This is the first time that the Department of Justice is prosecuting someone for illegally importing greenhouse gases, and it will not be the last. We are using every means possible to protect our planet from the harm caused by toxic pollutants, including bringing criminal charges.
So that's a big step. You know, that is first time that we've seen major action. And remember, that was not a minor offense. That was prosecuted by up to a $250,000 fine and up to 25 years in prison for the import of illegal refrigerants. So, why are we starting to see things like this? Why are we seeing illegal imports of refrigerant? Why are we seeing a shortage of refrigerant? Why are the prices of refrigerants going up? And how is the life cycle management of refrigerants going to change? Because it absolutely is. So, really, that's what we're here to talk about today is the entire life cycle management and how it looks to us. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And for those that are looking to reach out to learn more, they can get a hold of either one of the guys on LinkedIn. We'll have some other resources here in a little while, and we'll talk about ways that you can connect with AGAS, a very significant industry partner on this effort. So let's kind of do an intro. What are we going to talk about, guys? And let's talk a little bit about your individual roles in the industry and at AGAS.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started, Clifton. Hey guys, my name is Anthony Nash. My friends just call me Nash. You can really call me whatever you want. I'll respond to it. But I'm really excited. Really honored to be here with you, Clifton, and hopefully we're able to provide some really good knowledge for the ones that are joining today. For me personally, I've been with AGAS for a little over 12 years now. I've been in the refrigeration industry for about 15 years total. And my role currently in the business is the network training manager. So what I'm responsible for is all of our incoming technicians from a recovery perspective come through an onboarding program. And that starts with safety. It goes through a lot of like what we're talking about, HFC phase downs. And then we get into the actual, the bones and the meat of what we do. And that's refrigerant recovery. Not a lot of people know who AGAS is or that we're global. But from a local perspective here in the U.S., we've got over 30 locations, and I run a really good team of industry leading trainers that train our technicians on how to recover this refrigerant day in and day out. And so I'm really excited to be in the role that I'm in. As you can see on the screen again, there's a lot of folks that are in the industry that think from a recovery perspective that AGAS is kind of just in the U.S. and we're actually one of the worldwide leaders in recovery and reclamation in the industry. And even myself didn't really understand or really grasp the full picture of that until earlier on in early 2023. I had the privilege of flying down under and heading to our New Zealand market, where we launched a location there that handles the recovery and the reclamation of the products bringing in there, again, following the same kind of regulations that we have here in the US. And then I also had the privilege of flying over to our Australia plant and taking a tour there and then working with some of our recovery techs. So again, I've had my hands in quite a bit with the industry. And from a recovery perspective, again, I've kind of been all over the place when it comes to refrigerant recovery. And I feel like myself with the team of trainers and the folks like Hampton that we've got here, really are bringing an impact and a positive spin to capturing the refrigerant that in previous generations would have just let that go.
Exactly. And that was one of the comments that just came through, was on recovery, that it's very important for us to recover. We're going to talk about the whys of that here in a little bit. We're going to really dive into why all these changes are happening so fast, because they're really not new to the industry. It's been in progress for a number of years, and there were many years of legislation and industry input before that. But now we are really progressing very quickly through this entire HFC phase down. And so we're going to see a lot of changes in rules and regulations that are going to impact the supply of refrigerants to be able to give us a significant supply of refrigerants going forward, because we're not going to have the virgin refrigerant supply that we have had. So, we talked about all the different locations that you function out of. You have a variety of different facilities. I see that one plant right there in Punta Gorda. I think if there were any plants that I'd want to go to, Bowling Green is the closest to me, but Punta Gorda, Florida sounds like an awfully interesting destination for a road trip. I'm thinking that's a pretty interesting journey to go do there, Stephen.
Clifton, come down anytime. We'll be happy to host you.
We're going to talk about that later, because I'm awfully excited to talk about reclamation and what it looks like and that entire process. So we'll regroup on that one. So kind of explain to us what the entire issue that we're seeing in the industry right now. Where's it all come from?
Yeah, Hampton, I'll let you tackle that one, and you can go ahead and give your intro there before you go into the issue piece of it.
Yeah, definitely. And for everyone in the chat, everyone listening, apologize for the delay. There's a little bit of a lag on my end. But Steve Hampton, been with the business for 14 years. I've worked out of the Northeast market, specifically in Philadelphia. I've worked in California and now down in Florida, which is a very fun, interesting, hot market. So it is definitely a interesting business. But as far as what the issue is, I mean, getting into it, it's where does reclaimed refrigerant come from? It comes from each individual recovery that is performed. Without recovery, there's no reclamation. And that's really what we're looking for, to bring in as many pounds as possible, that initial recovery aspect of the business.
Yeah, one of the comments that just came in was they had heard that in places like Panama that they don't actually do recovery and reclamation, and that is something that's the reason we're here. We're here to talk about how not just our piece of the industry here in the US is changing, but globally, this is a very significant process that has been neglected for too many years and is now really getting a lot of focus. Well, if I go back to that map, we can actually see that you operate in so many different places around the world because the entire world is going through HFC transitions. It's not just us. We are a part of that whole Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, where many nations met together to decide that we were going to do this. And so we all came together to start this transition. We just happen to be right in the middle of it right now, which is why this whole training aspect is so important. And I know both you guys are very, very passionate about the training, which is why you're here today.
Yeah, and that alone should tell us something about how serious the world is taking the recovery of refrigerant, right? The fact that the Kigali Agreement is one of the only agreements that is globally recognized. I mean, think of all the hot button topics that there are in the world, and everybody on that Kigali Agreement agrees that we've got to work on capturing that gas. And it's one of again, it's why I've got a job. It's because we hire recovery technicians to show up every day and recover refrigerant. And with the Panama thing, I can't speak to Panama in particular, but it's no myth that one of our biggest competitors here in the U.S. is venting. Despite however many recovery companies are out there, or reclaimers or HVAC technicians, with buzz boxes or Apions in their trucks performing recovery, doing their job to be responsible, venting is still our number one competitor. And you would think that in an age where the AIM Act is coming down, Kigali Agreement is still very, very much in play, that wouldn't be the case, but it absolutely is. And we'll talk about that as we get into some of the reclaim numbers, as we talk about recovery numbers and reclaim pounds. But that's why we're on here, and that's why we're excited to be part of this platform to educate on why recovery and reclamation are so important to the industry.
Yeah, now this is so cool. A lot of people don't realize that we're not just governed by, like we look at the Kigali Amendment, right? So we're talking about the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. So we're talking about not only acts of Congress, but we're talking about international treaties that are all for the same purpose, to reduce our consumption of HFC chemicals, right? And HCFC chemicals and CFC chemicals. So it all kind of comes back into that Clean Air Act. But as we now move into the AIM Act, it sets up different standards. Because remember, everything that came along with the Clean Air Act was focused on our ozone depleting chemicals and our high global warming potential, primarily our ozone depleting potential. As we move into the AIM Act, now we're going to start talking more things about the safe handling of refrigerants, especially as we move into lower GWP refrigerants that have higher flammabilities. So we have a variety of things going on that we have to pay attention to. So let's talk about really these three different things, that the three different components within like the AIM Act that are causing us to relook at our own skill sets.
Nash, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just like before, it starts with training. So part of what we've talked about before, Clifton, is it's our job and our responsibilities, not only as technicians, but as industry leading trainers, to be up to date on some of these different things. So the Kigali Agreement, maintaining our 608 certifications and the updates of those, talking about A2L refrigerants is a big deal. And then obviously the AIM Act is a big deal, and it's going to be a big deal for the industry. it's reducing the amount of that new virgin product, the higher ODP or GDP product coming into the U.S. and focusing more on a reclaim mandate. One of the states, California, as we all know, is kind of leading the charge in this and saying that they're starting to raise those restrictions and say that X amount of the product needs to be, that you're putting back in your grocery stores or commercial refrigeration systems, needs to be reclaimed product. And so if we're looking at that as an industry, about there's no more of the virgin product coming into the U.S., or it's slowly, again, we talked as well about being behind even in that phase down process.
Right.
The fact that we're switching to a reclaimed mandate is big, because we need to train all of our technicians as to what that means for them, and kind of goes to the title of what this is that Dave Pedigo coined phrase, every ounce counts. And so when we talk about recovery, we talk about working through the reclamation side of the industry, it really is as simple as it seems. Every ounce of recovery counts, so that we can put that pound of recovered refrigerant, or that ounce of refrigerant, through reclaimers and back into the contractor's hands, ultimately kind of adapting to this AIM Act and the new regulation that's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah. We're going to see things do. Oh, I see Stephen. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah. And looking at where ounces come from, right? You know, like, how many disposable 410A cylinders have been brought into the market that are just the heel of the tank is just left to atmosphere? You're talking about 1 million cylinders. That's 1 million pounds of gas brought back through reclamation alone. Even smaller appliances such as window ACs. Right now, we're getting into the R32 A2L refrigerants. However, the lifespan on those window ACs is still maybe a decade out until we start seeing those through reclamation. Right now, we're seeing a significant amount of 410A coming through window ACs. 90% of households use central air conditioning. There's still 10% that use window ACs. So you put that on a mass scale, you know, the volume of 410A that we can gather from avenues such as window air conditioners is going to be significant, let alone, you know, pulling those recoveries down to the prescribed vacuum levels and getting every single pound of refrigerant out. There's a lot of technicians that think, you know, 410A recoveries take forever, and they do. But blowing out 10 PSI, that equivalates to, you know, thousands upon thousands of pounds
of refrigerant
each
that we need.
Yeah. And that's, you know, where do we find that? Where do we find more 410A to bring back through reclamation? And it's every ounce. Like we said, every ounce counts.
One of the questions you just now came in from Howard, which is a great one. Howard and I talk about this all the time. You know, do we see any drop-in replacement refrigerants for R410A? We talk about, you know, in the service gas sector of R410A equipment, are there any refrigerants? No, there's currently no SNAP-approved replacements for R410A. So all we have is what is out in the industry, because R410A is a higher global warming potential refrigerant, which we're going to see less and less of in new equipment. And when we go back and talk about that whole technology transition, a lot of people don't realize that the AIM Act has so much authority in there. We've already seen things with the technology transition that is moving us forward than these step-down phases of the AIM Act. It's actually forcing the equipment to have lower GWP refrigerants way ahead of schedule. And then you have California going, and by the way, we're going to start requiring that you're going to have a certain amount of reclaimed refrigerant going into new equipment. And we also forget that even through that technology transition, we're going to see new equipment that is going to have requirements for a certain amount of reclaimed refrigerant in brand new manufactured equipment in just a few years. So we have to get ahead of that curve now. We can't wait until it's mandated that new equipment has recovered refrigerant used in it. We have to get some of that refrigerant back into the network, because that slide is huge. I know we've kind of talked about this chart a few times. Kind of give us a little perspective on what you see out of this phase down schedule and why it's hurting people so much already.
Yeah, I think it's a big piece to talk about. I'll go real quick, Hampton, and I'll let you jump in there. Again, it's why the recovery aspect of AGAS is here. without that recovery piece, and we've got a bunch of different avenues to acquire that refrigerant. With the Refrigerant process, we work with wholesale houses, but AGAS, what we're looking for is to acquire as much of that product as we can in the market, so that we can run it through the reclaimers and keep up with that supply. One of what this chart shows, and why it's important from a reclaim perspective, is if that product continues to be phased down and we're not reclaiming it to supply the current demand of units that are out there, then we have to go to different products. And that's where the A2Ls are coming in. But the industry's not, quite frankly, the industry's not ready even for the A2Ls yet. There's a lot of discussion around what that's going to look like: transportation, training, safety. But from where we're currently at, just focusing on the 410, that's why we're training the technicians to do it. We all were part of that. If we've been around long enough, I'm old enough to remember when we would just cut the lines and vent that 10 PSI, or we've got that one disposable that has, maybe 50 PSI, 100 PSI or vapor heal in it. And we would just let that go in the back of our truck as we were driving down the freeway. I'm not admitting to that. I'm just saying that
I might have heard stories of that.
I've heard stories. The industry
really aren't around anymore.
Right. Well, and the industry that was the standard. But like Hampton said, and the other slide had showed, AGAS, there really isn't a unit that's too small for us to recover. I mean, we're not going to get into the business metrics of what makes sense, but if in that one picture that you showed, if we've got a customer that has 30, 50, 100 disposables, that could be 30, 50, or 100 pounds of heal vapor product that we are putting into certified recovery cylinders and back to our certified reclaimers. That's a big deal when it talks about that HFC phase down and the calendar of it.
I've already talked to local distributors that have put into play agreements with their contractors that their supply of service gas is going to be in relationship to the amount of reclaimed gas that they're bringing back, because it rewards the contractors that are doing things properly. If you're not reclaiming gas and you're just buying gas, you're buying gas, we know what you're doing. We know what your service practices are, and they are not correct, right? Either you're not recovering or you're not repairing. That's the only two options, versus a contractor that is actually doing things right. So distributors are struggling with this as well. They're going to have a shortage of refrigerant. Anytime we have that shift in supply and demand, right? When our supply is high, or when our supply is low and our demand is high, we know what's going to happen to the price, which is why so much of the prices of our refrigerant have went up. So we're going to see a variety of changes in our industry. And you're right, it always comes back to, we all have a responsibility. Every one of those little cylinders has the potential of up to a pound of refrigerant. Patrick Murphy was just saying that in the past, they discovered that they would typically have about 5 pounds of vapor refrigerant left in a 125-pound cylinder. So not just every ounce, every pound matters. And so when we talk about the amount of refrigerant that is out there, there is a lot of refrigerant that is available that is not getting back into the industry. So let's kind of talk about like the opportunity for that amount of refrigerant that is in the field. Sure.
So yeah, I mean, if you look at this chart here, it shows the opportunity. It shows the amount of reclaimed product versus the amount of total pounds in just the U.S. market alone. 300 million pounds of refrigerant product is an astronomical amount when you talk about how many units there are and how many operational HVAC systems there are in use right now.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, exactly. So on this slide, looking at there's over 5 billion units that are in operation compared to almost an 8 billion population. And so even if you just look at the responsibility piece of it, we're only reclaiming, we as an industry are only reclaiming a small percentage of that 300 million. And the goal for not just AGAS, but all of the global worldwide reclaimers is to try to lessen that number, increase the reclaim number, ultimately putting that product back in the hands of the technicians. So yeah, there's a huge opportunity for not only recovery but reclaim. And then the piece of it that not a lot of people talk about is the separation side of things. The industry, one of the other things that we're realizing is because the demand and the supply for 410 is so high right now, there are technicians that are taking shortcuts. And even though there's not a drop-in replacement for 410, it doesn't mean that a technician can't add a different type of refrigerant into a system just to get it by. And then that's where when we come into a recovery aspect, that's where separation comes in. And that's where AGAS, it's a different branch of our business, of our business model, is separating that refrigerant that we pull out so that we can put good reclaimed product back into AHRI spec cylinders back out to the market. So it's a responsibility all over the place, from recovery to reclaim to separation. And I think that's kind of what Hampton was getting to. And if you're back, Hampton, I'll let you jump in there.
Yeah, I'm back. Appreciate that. And when we going back and we look at phase downs within the market, 22 would have been the last phase down, phase out. From 2017 to 2019, we saw an increase in reclaimed material. Currently we're sitting at about 15.3 million pounds reclaimed in 2022, 2017 to 19, and we're looking at 19 million pounds. So as we see a trend of refrigerants leaving the marketplace, we are going to see an increase in reclaimed material. And we have to increase our reclamation capability as a whole by 5 times greater than what we're currently at. And where does that come from? It comes from doing the right thing
on the ground,
capturing those gases. And touching on, drop-in or replacements, ESCO, I actually give you guys props on this. There's really no such thing as a drop-in refrigerant. There's a replacement refrigerant.
Yeah.
During that timing, 2015, 16, 17, I know all the guys in the industry remember this, when 22 went from, dirt cheap to skyrocketed. What happened? Those replacement refrigerant alternatives started dropping out, and what we saw on the reclamation side of it is a significant increase in mixed material.
Yeah,
that's why at AGAS we've really dedicated a lot of time and a lot of engineering power towards separation capability. R22 being a single component refrigerant is definitely on the easier side to reclaim. When we look at 410A being a 2-component refrigerant, it takes a lot more separation capabilities, and that's where AGAS is leading the pack globally on separation of refrigerant.
I know in the past we've always had a misperception of mixed refrigerants. If you had a contractor technician that had a cylinder that they knew was a mixed refrigerant, it was kind of looked at as an eyesore. Man, what am I going to do with this thing now? I don't want to take it back to my local distributor. They're going to charge me. I know my local distributor, now this has been a while, but at the time was charging me $75 per cylinder for mixed refrigerants. And so there was always that stigma of, is it really worth my time to take something in and then still pay to have something done? But now it's going to be very different, because now we're moving into a new phase of refrigerant where all of our HFC refrigerants are going to be expensive. They're all going to continue to get more expensive in a short period of time. So all of our refrigerant starts having more value to it than what our early perceptions of refrigerants would have had.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a comment in the chat, but someone had said, reward the positive or the good behavior when it comes to seeing things done. And that's an interesting concept, reward people for doing the right things. I'd be curious to see what that looks like. Obviously it would start at a company level, even at AGAS, what does it look like to reward our technicians for doing the right thing? And obviously that sounds kind of cliche, but what the recovery techs are hired to do at AGAS is to do the right thing and to recover those refrigerants. But what we tell our technicians in the field, we call them FSTs, field service technicians. And one of the biggest things that we train them is, even though they may be in a smaller location, think Fresno or Detroit or some of these other locations that we've got, it doesn't mean that they don't have a voice or they don't have a responsibility to continue the education of our business. And so our training, when we bring people into Texas for our training, it doesn't just include how to actually show up and where's the safest, fastest spot to recover from. We show them this graph. We talk about what the HFC phase down looks like. We talk about what their important role is. In our industry, we've got over 100 recovery techs out in the field doing this every day out of the back of pickup trucks. But we've started to grow and duplicate our business to where now we're needing dedicated employees to just consolidate that gas at the shops. And recently we had a group of 6 individuals come through that their entire job is to consolidate that gas. And in the industry terms, they look like they're the low hanging kind of bottom of the barrel technicians, but that couldn't be further from the truth. And what we teach is you guys are actually one of the most responsible individuals we have, because you're the last one that gets to touch that refrigerant and manage the refrigerant in the life cycle management process before it gets transported back to our plants to be reclaimed. So it's actually a big deal when you talk about the amount of numbers that we're pulling in from recovery, and then again to that bigger number of 300 million pounds needing to be recovered in the market. That's a big number, and that's not done with just A-gas, but as an industry as a whole, partnering together, training on the updates and the requirements coming down the pipeline.
I can remember when I first got into the trade, young guy, my job when things were slow was to go through all of the recovery cylinders, set them in the room overnight at temperature, see what refrigerant was in them, combine them into common cylinders so that when we were taking them in, we weren't taking in 20 cylinders, we were taking in 3 or 4. And 20 years later, that's one of the practices that I was still doing, just like I did when I first got into the industry. So 25 years ago, it was as important to me as an individual to manage my refrigerants as what it should be now. And I feel for some of these young technicians that haven't been taught the importance of reclamation. And so we're hoping that this resonates with a generation that understands their impact to the environment. If you want to make an impact to the environment, it starts with every individual that takes on the responsibility for every ounce of refrigerant.
And Hampton, that's probably a good spot to talk about some of our technology, not only in recovery equipment, but in talk about the neutronics and its testing capabilities. Because I laugh when you said that put them in a warehouse at room temperature, because it's almost antiquated. But when you look at the technology that's out there and has been out there for a while, Hampton, you talk about some of the neutronics and the testing capabilities that we've got out in the field now that makes the technicians' jobs much easier.
Yeah, so we don't want to guess. We want to know exactly what that refrigerant is, and the pressure temperature relationship is, Clifton, very reliable, right? Yes. Decades old, but as technology advances, we got to be able to adapt to the tools, and being able to test that refrigerant on the spot, within a minute or two as a quick reading to identify that really helps kind of maximize our ability to recover that material, consolidate it, and bring it back to reclaim. Back to our reclaim facility and separate it if needed, and bring it back to HRS 700 standard. Utilizing technology really allows us to advance that and make sure that we're not bringing back mixed material.
That AHRI 700 is a very important thing for people to understand, because they may not recognize that our reclaimed refrigerant has the potential to be even more pure than refrigerant going into new equipment. Can we talk about that for a little bit and how important it is to know that reclaimed gas is not used gas? Once it's been through the process, it actually is very highly purified refrigerant.
That's a really good point, Clifton. I would say 20, 30 years ago, the reclamation industry was maybe laughed at. That the technology that we had was definitely not advanced enough to bring it back to the market, and let alone meet standards. So it was more of a reccycling than a reclamation.
Yes.
In today's era, the last decade, reclamation has taken off due to the high demand, and that's obviously with technology increase and everything else that we're looking at, that's going to help drive the industry. But yeah, when we look at the amount of certified gas out there, when it's brought in through reclamation, it is 100% guaranteed to be at standard or greater. And it's funny, virgin material, when it's brought in, there isn't necessarily a standard. So every every single pound of refrigerant that runs through reclamation is set to a standard, and virgin material is not. So anyone who's out there thinking, this reclaimed material is going to be dirty and blow out my compressor and create all kinds of issues, it's not true. The technology is so far advanced from where it was 20, 30 years ago, back when that was an issue.
So if I'm a large contractor and I have a lot of reclaimed refrigerant, is there the potential for actually doing a on-site reclamation of refrigerant?
Great question, Clifton. There's not the mobile reclamation, at least under AGAS. Mobile reclamation was not a tried and true method. Bringing it back to a facility and actually having that certified in a plant, in a lab, and going through that certification process, you can't do that on the road. You can't do that on the fly.
Sure. With our largest of contractors, do you have the services to be able to ship large quantities of refrigerant to be reclaimed and then be brought back for use? I know, like for myself, I worked for a very large grocery chain. And so we had a lot of refrigerant. And so we would accumulate thousands and thousands of pounds of refrigerant. And we actually used rapid recovery for those services. And I know for us, it was very important to know that we had a partner in the industry that could do a couple of different things for us. If we needed that refrigerant to be cleaned up and put into cylinders that we could return back into our own equipment, we had some options in that. But also on the reclamation side, do we have those options available as the shortages of new virgin supplies start to happen?
Yeah, definitely. We have. I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail, but we have partnerships throughout the country of companies that are bringing in, recovered material that's needs to be brought back for reclamation. So yeah, 100% something that we do.
Fantastic. So as we start looking at, what our responsibility is, I absolutely, Cantrell, I love that statement that you made. And this is really the reason that we do this. It's to help people understand it's not just about the cost of refrigerant. It's about the environment that we live in and the legacy that we have for the rest of the world. If we can reuse the refrigerant that is already in supply, it doesn't affect those virgin manufacturing of refrigerant. If we could bring back everything that was in the field, the AIM Act wouldn't be as daunting and scary as what we are seeing right now. Any questions while we're hanging out here just for a minute? We've got a lot of people out there joining us today. Any questions for AGAS and reclamation of refrigerants? Ooh, yeah, there's another good one. So this is a question that we don't talk about a whole lot. Do you see much from the automotive side of things, Stephen?
Great question. We 100% do. 134A is really the largest quantity of refrigerant in automotive that we still come across. I think 2015, 2016 is when new cars went with 1234 YF. Yep. The amount of vehicles that are older than that is astronomical. So we do see quite a bit of 134A coming through that surprisingly actually takes a little bit to reclaim. It's not that involved. I shouldn't get into that, but the dyes and the other stuff that they put in with the 134A, it's critical to run through reclamation and not just a recycling process. That is one thing that we do see.
Yeah, I've seen a comment that just came in that asked, does AGAS go out to wrecking yards and do reclamation of systems that are, at salvage yards?
Great point. And that's not reclamation, obviously. And the two different terms. Reclamation would be cleaning to the HR 700 standard. And recovery.
That's on my tongue. They said recover.
Recovery would be going to a wrecking yard or scrap yard to suck down. And that's where the ounces come into play. If we're looking at, a couple hundred window ACs, that's 2 pounds per window AC. You're looking at 200 pounds of refrigerant that scrap yards that are doing it incorrectly and just crushing that's 200 pounds of gas that escapes into the atmosphere. And regardless of how you feel on the ozone depleting or that whole global warming process, know that the second that gas is gone, it's gone. It's not coming back.
Yeah.
It takes decades for it to actually fall back down, but we're not capturing it in cylinders and putting it back through reclamation. The second it's busted and into the atmosphere, it's gone. There's no bringing it back.
Yeah, scrap customers are actually a big customer of ours, just because, if an HVAC contractor doesn't necessarily want to handle the product or want to deal with it, then they just give the unit to the crane company or to the scrap yard, and that's where we partner with the company that wants to dispose of that refrigerant. And that's one of the big key selling points that AGAS offers is the compliance piece, because in addition to recovering the product your own, some of these mandates coming down from the AIM Act and everything else is going to be better documentation of recovery of those units. And so if you hire AGAS to come do it, and I know it sounds like I'm selling, but part of what we do is we're certified recovery technicians, and if the EPA comes sniffing around your scrapyard, you can actually say, nope, we hire AGAS Rapid Recovery to come recover our refrigerant and can provide industry-leading documentation for all that. So it takes the pressure and the worry off of an individual, scrapyard, for example, or school that we're doing a demo on, to not have to be afraid that they're gonna see that if they're doing the right things. We want to partner with the individuals doing the right things.
So I actually used to use Rapid Recovery for that process. So when we were doing RTU retrofits on these older stores that had equipment that was over 20 years old, we would actually bring in 2 services on the day of 3 services on the day of transfer of equipment. So we would have our mobile crane company coming in that was doing equipment swap outs. We had AGAS recovering the refrigerant, and we had our local recycler hauling off the equipment. The recycler would not remove the equipment off the premises unless the refrigerant was removed out of it because of the large quantities of refrigerant. So we all had our own documentation of the entire process. Now, this is just personal belief. This is nothing that I've actually seen anywhere, even with, like Howard mentioned, even though you can read through the 9,000 pages of print if you want to, 900 some pages, 9,000 words of print, 96,808 words. It doesn't exactly say, but I would not be a bit surprised if we start seeing recovery requirements and evacuation, new leak rate requirements and evacuation limits for under 50 pounds, which is something that we don't talk about a whole lot in the industry. I think we're all going to see more stringent control on recovery and reclamation due to the AIM Act. So we're going to see a lot in this next year. It's going to be crazy. There's a lot of things we have to talk about. This whole life cycle management, it's so important to understand, because even if, let's just say, we probably have some friends out here in the audience that don't believe in ozone depletion and don't believe in global warming, and that's okay. We love you just the same. And we can help you understand this entire supply-demand scenario the same way. It was actually just brought up a minute ago here from AGAS, was due to the AIM Act, we're going to have less and less of a supply of HFC refrigerants. If we don't recover the refrigerant from the field and get it into reclamation, we will not have enough refrigerant going forward to service the systems, and you will be replacing equipment versus maintaining equipment. And so we don't want to make that a requirement on our homeowners and on our business owners. We want to be able to service equipment as long as that equipment is able to be serviced. We want to make sure we get the life expectancy out of it. If we don't stay ahead of the game and get the supply of refrigerants back in for reclamation, we're going to be doing a disservice to our customers. So you can look at it from a global warming perspective, or you can look at it as a supply and demand perspective. But either way, it is absolutely on us for every ounce of refrigerant to get back in, all of our HFCs particularly.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to talk about. I mean, I'm glad you bring up the 50-pound requirement. I mean, California has started to require that. Any single unit over 50 pounds of a factory charge is now required to be tracked on the recovery as to where that refrigerant goes. We kind of call it cradle to grave when it comes to the refrigerant management process. And, it is cumbersome and it's tedious, but I think that it puts a responsibility on it puts a responsibility on the unit owner to make sure that their unit is kept up to leak rate standards. And so if we can tighten those leak rate standards up, then less and less of that product is going to the atmosphere. And then again, if we can maintain the recovery side of the business, then that's what's going to feed those reclaimers. And so California is starting it, and I would not be surprised if the rest of the country starts to follow that. I don't anticipate going less than 50, but 50 is already going to be a pretty strict standard when it comes to documenting that refrigerant coming out of that system,
right,
and having to report on it.
Yeah, I hope it does. I'm with you, Ray. I hope it does. It'll change everything. But unfortunately, sometimes things don't change until it hurts. So.
we welcome the change, because I mean, stricter leak loss rates means that recovery is going to be needed. So that's really where we look forward to having the opportunity to work with these HVAC contractors and the ones listening in here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the buyback program a little bit. This is where people start tuning their ears in a little bit when it starts going from, oh, I got to pay to have this done, to, is there something in this for me? Let's talk about different options that we have here.
Yeah, so not going in details on specific buybacks, but definitely knowing that the industry has shifted to a buyback program. I'd say 2008, 2010. Prior to that, refrigerants did not have a buyback. It was probably more frustrating to get rid of a cylinder of refrigerant than anything. Since 2010 and moving forward, there's been a significant increase in reclamation technology, and what brings in the refrigerant lifecycle management. The supply, the recovery, or the supply, the use, the recovery, and the return. So having that circular economy allows us to kind of create that program. When we look at buybacks, each refrigerant, and we'll just run through these questions that you have, Clifton. What's the lowest purity level accepted? A gas, based on our separation capabilities, pretty much every pound of gas out there we're going to bring in, as long as it's a not an A3 or anything.
Sure, even if it's acidic.
That
we are talking about CFCs, HCFCs, HFCs, and HFOs as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Clifton, because I think we're losing Hampton. Punta Gorda's internet's not playing nice. Yeah, so like Hampton said, and I'll answer your question, the acidic gas. Yeah, we can bring back acidic gas, and overall, from because we're doing the recovery, reclamation, and separation side of things. I don't want to say that acidity doesn't matter, but it's something that we can actually handle with our plant capabilities. And so before, a lot of the industry will say, oh, it's acidic 22, it's compressor burnout.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily concerned about that, because as part of that reclamation process, we'll clean that refrigerant up, remove the oil impurities, oil contaminants from that refrigerant. And so like Hampton said, if it does have value to it, we'll provide a buyback for it. If it doesn't, then we'll still bring it back so that we can get it processed, whether that's through reclamation, separation, or destruction. So, if we keep rolling down here, before I continue with the rest of the questions, there's two kind of avenues of our business. There's the recovery side, and then there's what we call a cylinder exchange side, and that's either going to be reclaim or rapid exchange. So the recovery side, just like you had said, Clifton, you hired A-Gas to come out. We'll recover the refrigerant out of the rooftop units. If we're recovering the refrigerant out of the rooftop units and we're bringing it away, so it's now our gas, we're bringing it back to our sites. If it's a gas that's got a value, R22, 410, 134A, we'll absolutely pay on that gas brought in addition to the service that is required to go and recover those units. Nice. On the reclaim or the refrigerant exchange side of things, that's a free service that we actually offer to wholesale houses or to end customers, refrigeration contractors, where we'll just show up and do a swap. And there's really, I don't want to say that there's not a minimum for that, because it's market dependent, but we'll show up to a site weekly or biweekly that has 5 recovery cylinders that you just want us to test, weigh, and bring back your cylinders. That exchange process will drop you off 5 certified in-date clean recovery cylinders for your technicians to reuse. And so that program is a newer program that we've started doing over the past 4 or 5 years. That's actually really bringing those gas acquisition numbers up for us, because a lot of the contractors may not want to pay to have the service of recovery done. They want to do it themselves. And, despite the speeds or everything like that, but from an exchange program, it's actually hitting both sides of the market, where you have got your small mom and pops, or you've got your larger customers that may have 20 or 30 recovery cylinders that they're just looking for a simple swap. I want you to take my full cylinders, drop me off empties, and then give me a check for that gas if it's got value in it. And that's where, again, we've started to lead the industry when it comes to documentation, technology, testing that gas on site, and giving you an accurate. You won't see our recovery technicians with a blue compound gauge testing that gas at a customer site. We're going to use certified refrigerant testing capabilities and those types of things. And so, yes, we offer pickups. We offer that swap program. The cylinders that we're dropping off are clean, certified, in date, ready to go. And then the last question there, do you offer your reclaim refrigerants to buy? And yes, there's a number of ways to get into contact with AGAS to purchase the refrigerants, whether it's at a local level at one of our sites, or when you want to reach out to kind of our sales team for bulk orders or for bulk pricing, you can do that as well. And we'll work with our marketing team and our sales team to get some of that information out to you. But all those questions are really good questions when it comes to our buyback program.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. That brings up some perspectives I hadn't even thought about, especially on the supply side.
And Clifton, I think I'm back.
Yeah, there you are.
The HVAC guide for homeowners. I saw his comment, and I'm on a Viking ship right now, so self-service here is a little bit choppy. These waves are coming in, I think, a little bit hot.
He said Punta Gorda. He didn't say out in the harbor. Got a fishing pole waiting for when we get done.
But yeah, I mean, going into Clifton, when you guys use us. Oh boy.
All right, so I'm going to bring up another question real quick, Anthony, while I got you here. So one of the questions that came in, which is a very interesting question, what percentage of that refrigerant that is being recovered is actually able to be remanufactured into new reclaimed refrigerant? How much do you are not able to reclaim properly?
That's a good question. I don't want to misquote. I don't want to misquote what that actual number is. But what I'll do is I'll talk to the actual metrics and technology that we offer as a business. And so there are certain percentages of the gas that comes in that we just can't do anything with. It's mixed beyond separation capacity. It's a carbon gas. So think R12, some of the low pressure gases and chillers that are more valuable for the carbon credit offsets.
Right.
But I would say that any of the gas that's not sent off for destruction, or the carbon credit offsets, or that's not needs to be destroyed without carbon offsets because it's mixed so bad. I mean, really, it depends on what we're bringing in. But anything that doesn't fall into those categories is run through separation. And with 410, if we get 410 and 22 that's mixed together, we can actually separate the different components of those two gases. And again, I don't want to get into the technology of it a whole lot, but you can separate those gases and then pull the good 410 components off, and then process, package, and sell those 410 components, so those AHRI 700 standards, and then do something else, whether it's destruction or disposal of that other product. And so, that we've got different technologies at our plants. And so you mentioned wanting to get up to Bowling Green. Bowling Green, we actually have kind of our own certified destruction unit.
I just seen a message from Beck on that you have Pyroplast proprietary destruction equipment. Are you kidding me? That's
exactly.
got a roadshow all over that one.
Yeah. So our Bowling Green facility, in addition to our Rome facility and our Punta Gorda facility, they all have different offerings, but our Bowling Green facility is kind of our performance chemicals piece of it. And so we do have a proprietary piece of equipment called Pyroplast that helps and aids in that destruction for us. So even if it can't be reclaimed, it goes to that certified destruction process. And so we are trying to manage and be the best stewards of that refrigerant that's recovered from the time that it hits our cylinders. And so I'm sure that we can get back with you, Clifton and Betsy, and the ones that are asking the questions on what the exact numbers are. But overall, there's really not anything we can't do with recovered refrigerant.
Fantastic. So
I think
got a QR
just to touch on the any Star Wars fans out there. The plasma arc destroyer. Old technology. When we look at technology advancements, back in the day, it used to be incinerate gases that would have a degree of destruction, but our plasma capabilities, we're at 99.999% destruction on those refrigerants. So when you think about it, what exactly is that? You think of the Death Star in Star Wars shooting that laser.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what we're doing. We're blowing up those molecules, really just destroying those. Like I said, 99.99949% destruction on refrigerants. Really leading the pack on that one.
So we have personally seen some counterfeit cylinders starting to show up in the market that we are heavily against and trying to combat technicians from even looking at them. Are you starting to see very many of those come through? And how are we even going to handle those things? Because they are not safe, in my perspective.
And that's huge. If you guys can still hear me well, I'll take this one, Nash. This is definitely something new. When we look at counterfeit cylinders, what exactly is that? There's no DOT rating. There's no hydrostatic test rating. The valves on these tanks are actually above the rim.
They're shut-off valves.
Yes.
It's really unsafe, really unsafe.
So A-gas will take the pride. And this is where our services would come into play. You legally can't transport that tank the second a pound of refrigerant, second an ounce gets in that tank. So with our services, we'd be able to go to that job site, or you'd be able to go to that site and evacuate that tank on site into our DOT certified cylinders. But definitely
the owner can destroy the tank afterwards.
Yeah, please drill a hole in it, cut it in half.
Get rid of it.
Call Amazon or wherever you got it from and get it out.
Yeah, it's going to be the same discussion that we started the show with of bringing that product, across the border, across the southern border. We're going to see more of that because I think what we all can agree on is that innovation is always going to shine through. And so if there's a will, there's a way. And so if people can make cylinders or even refill, because in addition to the counterfeit cylinders, there's also folks out there that will put non-certified, non-reclaimed refrigerant back into cylinders. And so there's a lot of different avenues in the industry that we're working on combating with the likes of ESCO and HVACR and everybody else. It's a really good partnership that we've got. But I think we can all agree that from a safety perspective and from a responsibility perspective, we all want the same thing.
I agree. And like we talked about earlier, it comes back to proper education. And we're very proud to work with you on training and education for the industry. And this is a lot of different things for us to talk about right now. I'll be seeing some of you at the National HVACR Education Conference that's coming up in, oh my goodness, weeks. It's like right around the corner. And so we're going to be there to learn, to talk, to understand what's changing in the industry. I'm sure you're going to see some A-gas shirts walking around. So stop by and get some business cards, get more information, get some contacts. Remember, the conference is about all of us staying connected. Right? We do this every week. We have different trainers from the industry come on board to talk about what they're seeing from their perspective of the industry, bring some firsthand education. Well, you want to meet some of these folks? Well, come hang out with us and we'll all sit around and we'll talk about HVAC. We'll all nerd out on the HVACR industry together.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. We've got our internal conference happening next week, and then immediately following that conference, or in 2 weeks, and then immediately following that conference, me and my training team will be heading to that expo you guys are putting on, and we're really excited to learn some things and make those and broaden those connections, Clifton.
Yeah, I am very much looking forward to it. All right, well, we're right at the end of the hour. We still have a lot of people hanging out in this community. We love the fact that you're spending time to get better educated and just be as informed as you possibly can about all of these crazy changes we're going through, refrigerant transitions, technology transitions, potentially new certifications and requirements for education that we'll see out of the AIM Act that will look different than things that we've seen out of the Clean Air Act. So stay tuned right here every week to see what's happening in the industry and join us at the National Education Conference. Look forward to seeing you guys there. We're going to have to get some time scheduled for us to do some podcast recording while we're out there as well.
Yeah, we'll be excited for it.
I like it.
All right, guys, any last parting messages or contact information that we want to share with anybody before we get out of here? I know I've got some contact stuff, agas.com, for anybody that wants to learn more about what agas is doing.
Yeah,
I
like I
just wanna
said, me
thank
and my
everyone-
team will be. Go for it,
ahead.
Hampton. Yeah, so me and my team will be at the HVAC conference, and we really look forward to it. If you see any of the AGAS gear walking around, please don't hesitate to come up and say hi. And Clifton, thank you for this opportunity. We're really excited in the partnership, and we hope that we can continue on educating the industry. So again, thank you very much for having us on.
Yeah, no, appreciate you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you, Clifton, and everyone who joined the chat, joined this conversation. It's a big piece. Now, we're all in this together. Every ounce counts. Is you, me, and everyone else in this HVAC industry. We really got to stick together and do the right thing to make it happen.
I think it was Ray mentioned earlier, that would be a great shirt. You guys should think about that. That's a dandy shirt. Every ounce counts.
I think our marketing team is working on something. So.
I bet Betsy's out there going, liking that. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again next week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. Tell everyone about what we're doing here. Hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.